welcome to my YouTube channel, From Fertility to Delivery. I have my friend Allie here, and we're going to talk about all the things, hypnobirthing, yoga, and how everything works with the actual birth process. Welcome, Allie. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this whole process. It was wonderful.
It's my pleasure.
Yes,
thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So you have your own YouTube channel, so I do want you to talk about that, but I also want to talk to you about your yoga experience as well.
Okay, wonderful. I've been a yoga teacher for over 10 years, and we've been friends for over 10 years also,
Yes,
which is
true.
a nice thing. Before we became mothers, before any of this all started. You can find me at my yoga channel, Yoga with Allie, and we'll put a link to that in the comments or in the description below. I basically got into yoga because I had a dance background and I had injuries to my knees and to my lower back. And so yoga was a way for me to stretch my muscles, to strengthen all of my ligaments, and to really be able to heal my body. So I originally got into yoga for a very physical reason, but then obviously as I got more interested in yoga, I uncovered the spiritual aspects of it. I became really interested in studying and practicing meditation. And then eventually, in 2009, I got certified to teach yoga, and that's when I really went in depth and really learned a lot about the spiritual aspects of yoga as well.
That is wonderful. I actually found out about hypnobirthing from Allie, so I appreciate that because it opened up a whole new world for me. So I wanted to hear about how you learned about hypnobirthing and the positive birth stories.
Okay, so went into the hypnobirthing class having no idea what hypnobirthing was. I just saw like a list of classes listed on the hospital website, and I thought, hypnobirthing, hypnosis. I like hypnosis and meditation. Let's try that class.
Yeah.
But I had no idea what hypnobirthing was. All of the literature and all of the meditative practices that are surrounding hypnobirthing, and the fact that hypnobirthing also means natural birth, or in many cases, that's the goal, is to have a natural birth. And I went into that first hypnobirthing class. I'm not a shy person. Our hypnobirthing instructor asked, is anyone here planning on having an epidural? And I shot my hand in the air and I was like, me? Why feel pain if I don't need to feel pain? Epidural me up. I love the drugs. Give me it all, whatever. But then after seeing birth video after birth video, hearing about birth stories, reading about birth stories, one of my favorite books that I read during pregnancy was Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. And I was completely changed. My mind was changed about having a natural birth. And I thought, you know what? Women have been doing this for eternity, for the entire history of the human race. We don't need to make birth medical. We don't need to take medicine or drugs to numb ourselves from feeling this beautiful process, which is birth. And I am also a very stubborn person, so I decided this is what I'm doing. I'm having a natural birth. I don't need an epidural. I don't need drugs. I'm not going to do it, and I know that I'm powerful enough and strong enough and dedicated enough to do it. With that said, obviously not all births work out perfectly. Complications can happen. Things come up. Your baby could need special attention. Things can happen, and it doesn't mean that you're any less dedicated to hypnobirthing. You could still have, the birth of your dreams with hypnobirthing, by hypnobirthing, and have an epidural and have a C-section if it comes to that. But I do think that if you start off with the mindset that I'm going to have a natural birth, I'm going to go on this hypnobirthing journey and use all of these hypnosis techniques and these breathing techniques, and those are going to be my toolbox and my arsenal that is going to get me through this process, then I think that you're going to be in a successful state of mind, and you're more likely to be able to have that natural birth. And I've got 2 natural births under my belt, and I'm done having children, so that's all I'm going to do.
Yes.
But I'm very happy to be on this side of things, let me just say.
Yes, 2 and through, both of us as well.
Yeah.
2 here and we're done.
Yes.
But at the same time, it was a wonderful journey, so we're not really done because we're helping other women with the process.
Exactly. I shared the gospel of hypnobirthing with you, and now you're going on and sharing it with all of these people across the world, and it's a beautiful and magical thing.
It is. Hypnobirthing really does empower you to feel what women are built for, which is to give birth, because we are the only gender that can give birth, and we have it all inside of us. We just have to tap into it. So now we can talk about positive birth stories.
Okay, yes. Okay, so I had 2 natural births, as I said. The first birth with my first child was more of a marathon. It was an 18-hour, long, steady, slow process. My second birth was more of a sprint. It kind of happened over a course of hours, but then my waters released, and after that moment when my waters released, she was born 1 hour later. And that was like the most intense process. That was the most intense hour of my life, I will say. But using my hypnosis techniques that I learned in hypnobirthing and using the breath, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, really helped and really allowed me to focus and to get through it and to do it. And it was really an amazing process. And I'm glad that my first birth went the way it did. And I'm glad that my second birth went the way it did, in a way. I was able to have that golden hour with my first birth. I was able to delay that cord cutting for like 10 minutes or something until the cord turned white. It was so nice. My second birth, because she came through my birth canal so quickly, she was in a little bit of respiratory distress, so they had to cut the cord right away. They had to sweep her away just to monitor her breathing for an hour. So I kind of missed that golden hour with her. But then she ended up being totally fine, and I was able to take her back after an hour and nurse her, and my husband stayed with her the whole time. Yes. So that's basically very, very briefly how my 2 birth stories went. Two very different birth stories.
Yes.
Yeah. All the planning in the world can't prepare you for how it's going to be. It's going to be different than what you imagine. No matter what you're imagining, it's not going to be that. It's going to be different.
You get the curveballs.
Yes.
But hypnobirthing helps you manage those curveballs, and that's what's the best thing about it. Very important to use the tools. So you actually have 3 tools that you want to share with us?
Yes.
Your top 3.
Okay, so I've assembled my top 3 tips for a successful hypnobirthing experience. So the first one is to find the 2 or 3 hypnosis techniques that resonate with you the most. So hypnobirthing, you learn, I don't know how many there are, probably like 20 different hypnosis techniques that could help you stay in a state of trance, in a state of hypnosis, so that you are completely inwardly focused on birthing your baby, breathing your baby down. But not every technique is going to resonate with you. So find those 2 or 3 techniques that you love and practice just those techniques. Forget about all the other techniques, or don't forget about them, read about them, but you don't need to practice them as much as you should practice those few core techniques that you love, that resonate with you, and that you want to use during your birthing process, so that by the time you get to your birth, in a moment's notice, you could be like, okay, A, B, 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 C, 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 D, 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 or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, those were the 2 that I loved, that I kept going back to. And then be open to ones that you invent yourself. And it's amazing how my body still responds to those techniques immediately. Like right now, I'm feeling more relaxed because I did those techniques. And that's a cool thing about hypnobirthing too, is that it doesn't just go away after you give birth. It stays with you, and those are techniques that you can use in your everyday life when you have your screaming infant or your toddler is running around the house like a crazy monster. You know, you could use those techniques again, which is kind of nice. Okay, so my second tip for a successful hypnobirthing experience is to assemble your hypnobirthing dream team. And what I mean by that is, who are your support people who are going to be there with you in the room helping you out. So in my case, it was my husband and my doula, and in my first birth, it was also my mom. In my second birth, my mom was watching my toddler, so it wasn't my mom was not a part of my second birth, but my husband and my doula were my 2 support people in my second hypnobirth. My husband and my doula acted like a tag team, and they helped me back and forth, back. If you just have one support person, it could be extremely tiring for them, which is fine. A lot of people don't have a doula, and that's fine. But because I had my husband and my doula, they probably, between the two of them during my first birth, which was 18 hours long, they probably gave me about 1,000 hip squeezes between the two of them.
Okay.
During my second birth, the hip squeezes were also occurring, but because it was so intense, that last hour from my waters releasing to giving birth, they literally could not hip squeeze me any longer individually. So one stood on one side of me, the other one stood on one side, and they each pressed a hand into my hips to squeeze them hard enough for me to, you know, be able to have some release from that pressure on my hips. So assemble your birthing dream team. The number one tip that I have for a successful hypnobirth is to use your breath. And this goes back to my yoga background, because what is yoga without the breath? Yoga is all about breathing and breath work, and hypnobirthing is all about breathing and breath work. And I will say the two types of breath that are the most important are your surge breath and your birth breath, or your J breathing. So the surge breathing is the one where you fill up your belly and expand your belly as wide as you can by breathing in. I think you're supposed to breathe in to a count of 20, but it never really happens for me. I can't breathe in for 20 seconds. But breathing is in and filling up your belly, expanding it like a big balloon, and then exhale, squeezing your belly back down. And what that does is it makes room for your uterus to contract, for the baby to move down, and instead of clenching when you're having those surges, you get ahead of that surge with the breath. So you feel kind of when the surge is about to come on, and as you go through the process of labor, you'll begin to realize, oh, there's a surge coming on. And if you start that surge breath just before your surge starts, you can get ahead of the surge and fill up your belly like a big balloon and allow space within your belly for your uterus to contract. Remember how it contracts on the top of your uterus, and it's pressing your baby downward. Okay, I'm just gonna do one surge breath just so everybody could see.
Okay.
So if you inhale, you're filling up your belly like this, and then exhale, squeezing it back. Okay, and then as you exhale, you could also think about breathing your baby down, but you're not really breathing your baby down until you get to the birth breath. So how do you know when to go from the surge breathing to the birth breathing? You are going to feel like you can no longer do the surge breaths during your surges. You're going to feel either that your surges are too close together and you don't have a break between them, or you're going to feel like you can't catch your breath to take a deep enough breath to do your surge breath. That's how I knew in my second birth to transition to the J breath, or the birth breathing. The J breath is just what it sounds. You're making a letter J with your body, and you're taking a shorter inhale, and then it's all emphasis on the exhale, and as you exhale, you're breathing your baby down toward the birth canal. So I'm going to do a J breath just so you can see. Okay, and you don't necessarily need to be obviously in the position that I'm in. I was standing with my elbows on the edge of the bed when I was doing my J breaths for that last hour before my baby was born. I was standing at the edge of the bed with my elbows on the bed doing those J breaths. However, I felt during those J breaths, when it finally clicked, like, oh, maybe I should switch my breath from the surge breath to the J breath because I can no longer do these surge breaths anymore. When that finally clicked, with every birth breath, with every J breath that I took, I felt my baby moving down inside of me.
Yes.
It felt like inches at a time, which was equally really satisfying because I was like, yeah, we're getting somewhere, she's moving down, and also a little bit frightening because then you feel a tremendous amount of pressure, okay? And I don't know if you talk about this with your hypnobirthing students, but we always talked about how you can practice the birth breathing while you're releasing your stool.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's colloquialized as hypno-pooping. Have you ever heard of hypno-pooping? So while you're making number two, you can actually practice doing this J breathing or the birth breathing. And usually when you're going to the bathroom, a lot of people hold their breath when they're pushing down, right? And when you're bearing down, that's the most important time to not hold your breath, to exhale, okay? So as you inhale, just regular inflate your belly, and as you exhale, J breath, and see if you can release your stool that way. And that is a wonderful way to practice for actual birth breathing, because you're releasing a baby, you're releasing stool. It's kind of the same. It's in the same region of your body. It's all the same muscles, and those are my top 3 tips for a successful hypnobirth.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're
that
very
was
welcome.
really, really good information. And it's something that you don't really think about until you're in the moment. Maybe you forget about it, so it's good to watch this show over and over again to make sure that you really get those techniques down. Also, my class with Blissborn, it's a different method because we both did 2 different hypnobirthing modalities, but the goal is the same, to get into that zone in your mind, release the oxytocin, and have everything work for you. So you can have a manageable birth no matter what happens. If the baby's a month early, like mine was, or if it was a shorter labor, like yours was, with the water breaking, and then an hour later, the baby's there, much different from the first birth. So you can manage everything no matter what gets thrown your way, because birth is completely different with everyone.
Thank you so much, Dayna, for having me, and this has been a really fun time, as usual. We usually hang out and we don't film ourselves, so it's nice to actually do something different for a change. And you can find me at my YouTube channel, Yoga with Allie. You can click right there and you'll find it, and I will be adding prenatal and postnatal classes. Depending on when you're watching this video, there may already be some prenatal and postnatal classes up there on my YouTube channel, but take a look. There's some breathing videos, there's some meditation videos, and there's lots of yoga videos for you to try.
There's already a baby and me yoga video that's already posted.
If you already have your baby in your arms and you're looking for some physical activity, let's put up another card. You can click right there and you will you'll find my baby and me yoga class, and I hope you enjoy it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Allie.
You're very
Thank you,
welcome.
everyone. And for more information on From Fertility to Delivery, my YouTube channel, also Instagram, From Fertility to Delivery, Facebook, From Fertility to Delivery, and of course my website, www.fromfertilitytodelivery. All of those will be in the links below. Thank you so much.